Good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome to this session on tackling violence against women and girls. Please do interact with us throughout the session and ask any questions or share your responses or thoughts as we go along in the question box. As with any training session, you will get out what you put in, so please do try and stay engaged and share best practice and experiences where appropriate. We will also pause at timely points throughout the webinar to check for any questions, responses or discussion ideas and points. So please, like I said, we do encourage those to be put into the question box. Please do be mindful that this is an incredibly sensitive subject and the content of today's session might be upsetting, so please do take breaks if you need them. And also, if any of the participants are affected by any of the content in today's session, we will be providing signposting details throughout the webinar. And as a gentle reminder for those that have started to attend a little bit past 3:30, there is a PDF copy of the PowerPoint slides that can be located in the handout section. So please do feel free to download those, and a copy of the recording will be sent out in a follow-up email after the webinar. So firstly, a few introductions to put a face to a voice. My name is Kelly Johnson and I'm a Provider Development Officer here at NCFE. Stacey Mann also joins us today, and Stacey is a subject specialist for early years and childcare and also here at NCFE. And our role is to support centres through the planning, onboarding and further CPD opportunities for the for the NCFE qualifications, with a focus on promoting and advancing learning. Do you want to say hello, Stacey?
Good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here. Such an important subject, so I'm so glad so many have been able to attend.
Thank you. We're also really pleased today to have Kerry Liask from Northumbria Police, and she's joining us today. Kerry is a Violence Reduction Liaison Officer for the Education team as part of the Violence Reduction Unit Office at the Police and Commissioner Crime Commissioner. Kerry, would you like to say a quick hello?
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleased to be here. If there's any questions that I could answer, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Kerry. And thanks again, Kerry, for being with us today and the support that you've given us with this training session. So the agenda for today's session, we're going to look at firstly the government strategy and how we can implement this into our everyday practice, the key terminology and how it links to other types of abuse, the interventions and support that can be given, the underlying preventions that could be put in place to influence the culture of workplaces, signposting to relevant resources and support, and we will then have questions from attendees or delegates that will be answered in the best way possible. And as I said at the beginning, if we are unable to answer any of the questions in today's session, we will endeavour to go away, find out the answer and let everyone know after the session. As a gentle reminder again, some people will or might find this topic sensitive or upsetting, so do take breaks if you need them, and there will, as I've said, be signposting during the webinar with details for further information, help and support if you need them. So before we begin with the introduction, we'd first like to do a quick poll on how confident you're currently feeling with your knowledge of tackling violence against women and girls, with 1 being not a little confident and 10 being very confident. So you should see a poll that appears on your screen with 1 to 2, 3 to 4, etc. So if you could just take a moment to have a think about your current confidence levels in terms of your knowledge of tackling violence against women and girls. The responses are coming in, so that's great, but I will leave it open a little while longer just for everyone to have the opportunity to put a response in. Okay, I think we've got all the votes that we're going to get with this poll, so I'm going to close that off and I would just like to share the results with you. So firstly, many thanks for everyone for your responses. And as you can see, the poll results show that we do have a mixture of confidence levels in terms of people's responses. Now, it was our expectation for this first question that you would all be at different stages in relation to your confidence levels. And we do hope that by the end of this webinar, you are feeling more knowledgeable and confident with your knowledge and understanding of tackling violence against women and girls. So what I'd like to now do is hand over to Stacey, who is going to begin with an activity where you can share your responses.
Hi again, everyone. So we're beginning this webinar with a video that explores teaching and learning resources. So Sir Ken Robinson refers to Think Equal, which is a global initiative which calls for a system change in education. So whilst you're watching this video, I want you to consider how inequality affects tackling violence against women and girls. So watch, and if you can't see it on the screen, the link will also be available in the chat box for you to watch and then return to the webinar. After watching the video, we're going to use the question box on this GoToWebinar panel, which I think most of you have found now, for you to share your thoughts and responses. So we're thinking about how inequality affects tackling violence against women and girls, and most importantly, how we address it. Okay, as we come back into the meeting, I know some of you will have clicked on the link in the chat box to go away and listen. And if not, there were subtitles on there for you to be able to read along. But if it was the case that you couldn't see what was going on or hear what was going on, the link is there available for you. So I would suggest to go and have a look at that and just have a think about what Sir Ken Robinson is discussing there. So I think even without seeing the video, we can start to explore this question of what your thoughts about how inequality affects tackling violence against women and girls. So just pop in the chat box, in the question box, some of your thoughts on that. So how do you think inequality affects tackling violence against women and girls? And what do you think we can do to address it? just give everybody a couple of minutes to think about that. So straight away, we've got a comment about it making it seem more acceptable. It's a really interesting point. Thank you for that one. Any more responses to that? How do you think inequality affects tackling violence against women and girls? It allows girls' voice to be heard, yeah, or equally not to be heard. So yeah, absolutely. There has been a surge in this subject in the media. It has shown inequality beyond the norm. We address it by educating all better. Important that all children are given the same aspirations and see themselves as equal. We haven't been given the resources, the opportunity to be given the resources we need to protect ourselves. Interesting. It's always been seen as violence being against women and girls, and they were seen as lesser beings in history. Wow, some really lovely comments here. Interesting. Cultural differences in behaviours that might be acceptable in some countries is a real issue. This is a worldwide problem. So Ken Robinson talked about there about sustainability, and he talked about the Sustainable Development Goals. Here at NCFE, we have partnered with Dr. Diane Boyd from Liverpool John Moores University to create a sustainability resource that is embedded within the early years curriculum. And within that, the resource, there's lots of information about the Sustainable Development Goals and how we can embed them further into education. So quite a good one to look at for that, really. So thank you, everybody, for your responses there. It's important to maximise the window of opportunity, I feel, in a child's early years to nurture equality, respect and values. It's important to think about how we add to stereotypical discourse, incidentally being mindful of the power of your language, verbal and non-verbal, thinking about our expectations and reflecting as male and female professionals how we may add to this. We had a scenario at home this week about half term, and in my husband's workplace there are two team leaders. One's a female, one's my husband, and they have given priority to the female to have the half term off without even thinking, without even considering that my husband might want to have some time off with his children. And they spoke to him and said, we're giving the female team leader off because she's a mom. And he said, and I'm a dad. And there was just silence. And straight away, they sort of started backtracking and thinking, oh my goodness, actually, yeah, you might want to have some time off with your children as well. So it's still, as much as it's not indirect discrimination, you know, they didn't do it on purpose. They didn't really want to make him feel that way. They hadn't really thought outside of the box and thought really how they were using their language, how they were thinking about things. And so I think we can all reflect as practitioners, as professionals, and think about how we might be adding to that stereotypical discourse. Thinking about how we challenge older children through discussion, debate, co-production of values and so on. This video in particular, you know, there's lots of lovely videos included in the equality, diversity and inclusion session that we did, which is on our YouTube channel that you'll be able to access and show some of those resources to the students that you're working with. For example, our current Children's Commissioner, Dame Rachel D'Souza, talks about the importance of parental conversations at home around things like pornography with children from age 9. Research tells us that young children will become curious about what they see online from around 11, with higher percentages more likely to copy what they see as they reach their teens. We have to balance the digital rights of young children to access a digital world with the potential normalising of pornography, and that's just one example. So education, co-production and raising an awareness of this is key. Considering policy, procedure, consent and legislation so that everyone is much better informed. Everything that you guys have just been adding to our comments there. The tragic cases of of Sarah Everard, Julia James, Bibar Henry, and Nicole Smallman touched us all. But for every high-profile case, there are sadly many more. And the pandemic has brought new challenges and unfortunately cases rising due to perpetrators targeting their victims, that being online too. Again, we've got another bite size on e-safety, and that might also supplement this subject. In education, we have a high duty of care to attempt to prevent violence and to use our secret weapon, which is teaching. Through education, we can begin to change perspectives and empower all people to feel safer. Whilst it sounds like blue sky thinking to believe that we can eradicate violence against women and girls, today we'll discuss how we can put some measures in place to contribute to that cause. The government's strategy, announced by Priti Patel, was launched in July 2021, and that's why we're very much talking about women and girls today, and we have been questioned about that title, but it is in line with that strategy. The Safeguarding Minister, Victoria Atkins, said, "This national strategy has been shaped by these experiences and the 180,000 responses to our Tackling Violence Against Women and Girls call for evidence. We've drawn on the expertise of charities, academics and frontline professionals. We've also asked victims to help us understand what we need to do better." So they thank everyone who has contributed to that strategy, particularly those who had to relive those horrific experiences in doing so. The term violence against women and girls covers a range of crimes with a common theme that they are disproportionately affect women and girls. The most recent statistics show that 1 in 5 women are victims of sexual assault or attempted assault in their lifetime. And if we just reflect on that statistic there, 1 in 5 women are victims of sexual assault or attempted assault in their lifetime. Over 27% of women had experienced domestic abuse since the age of 16, 14% of men, and 20% of women aged 16 to 74 had experienced stalking since the age of 16, 10% of men, which was making women feel less safe. And I think very much when we talk about what has happened in the media over the last year or so, that lots of people have spoken out more about that and how all of us, and I'm sure people on this call can say the same about walking home and how they feel about walking home and whether they've ever thought, oh my goodness, I don't feel safe. I'm sure we all have felt like that at one point or another. The most recent statistics show that only 24% of women felt very safe walking alone after dark, in comparison to 46% of men. And thinking about that statistic, I think the comparison there of 46% of men makes me wonder whether that 46% of men who would admit that they didn't feel safe walking alone has probably hindered that that percentage there. So let's focus on that 24%. However, the proportion of women reporting feeling fairly or very safe walking home after dark has increased in recent years, rising from 57% in 2012 to 2013 to 69% in 2019-20. And that comes from the strategy report of 2021. Violence against women and girls is an unacceptable, preventable issue which blights the lives of millions. Crimes of violence against women and girls are many and varied. They include rape and other sexual offences, stalking, domestic abuse, honour-based abuse, including female genital mutilation and forced marriage and honour killings, revenge porn and upskirting, as well as many others. Whilst different types of violence against women and girls have their own distinct causes and impacts on victims and survivors, what these crimes share is that they disproportionately affect women and girls. So what is the government strategy and what does this look like? Understanding is the first one. Understanding what this strategy is about and the different areas that it covers is step one into more understanding. Sharing webinars and resources to ensure that everyone that we are working with is aware of this strategy and how to implement it into education is so high on the agenda. Next, we have prioritising prevention. The Department of Education will also develop additional support to help teachers deliver statutory relationship, sex and health education effectively and confidently. This will include working with leading experts to provide the best evidence-based approach to teaching about violence and abuse and enable teachers to share good practice. The government will make sure that the teachers of vulnerable pupils, such as those with special educational needs and disabilities, and those in care or in need, have the right support to deliver the curriculum. We need to ensure that consistency of approach. The department will develop non-statutory guidance and monitor and evaluate teacher confidence to deliver these difficult topics and continue to build a programme of support that meets teachers' needs. In addition, the Department for Education is exploring how university students might be utilised to support peer delivery of the PSHE lessons in schools. And please feel free to comment as we go along and I will tap into those comments or questions. A 2019 Universities UK report 89 highlighted that there is a significant value in building relationships with young people prior to entry into higher education, as it helps ensure continuity of messaging and cultivate active leadership in students from the outset. The Department for Education will also work with multi-agency safeguarding partners, the Home Office and the Department of Health and Social Care to support effective safeguarding arrangements with schools. It's essential that the wider safeguarding system, including statutory and non-statutory partners, works together effectively to identify and challenge harmful attitudes and behaviours and support children and young people who both exhibit and are victim to such abuse. To strengthen this requirement, the Department for Education has asked all safeguarding partners to report on how they are engaging schools in local safeguarding arrangements. And we will discuss that a little bit later in the webinar too. Then we have the supporting of the victims. The trauma will stay with that victim forever. It seriously compromises all life prospects and opportunities, which came from the Call for Evidence Victim and Survivor Survey. This is where signposting will come into the forefront. We must ensure that we are protecting ourselves. Some of the issues raised will be beyond our remit or expertise, and that is okay. We must then support victims by raising awareness of services that can be used and are specialised in that area. A definite area or government and police services, but again, our awareness of this will be key to all of the other points. So this pursuing perpetrators obviously will not be our responsibility, but making sure that we have those links and know where to refer our victims to or any of our students to. And a stronger system. The newly named Supporting Families programme, which succeeded the Troubled Families programme, supports some of the most vulnerable families in society by facilitating greater multi-agency working amongst local authorities and their partners to ensure families get access to the early coordinated support that they need to help them overcome their problems before they escalate. The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government will continue to encourage local areas to improve multi-agency working and update key workers' best practice on violence against women and girls. This will also require services working together and ensuring that communication is strong. In education, we will be strengthening our policies, providing CPD, as you are attending today, and looking at other ways that we can adopt whole setting approaches. I will now pass to Kelly to talk you through some of that key terminology that we discussed within the first part and that we'll be discussing later on.
Thanks, Stacey. So now I'd like for us to look at some of the key terminology and how they link to other types of abuse. We have already touched on some words that you may be familiar with, or they may be new to you. So we just want to go through some of the key terms so we're all in the same place. For some of you, this might just be a recap, and for others, it may be clarification. As we've said and do encourage, please do feel free to ask any questions and/or pop any of your comments into the question box as we go along, and we will continue to check and respond where appropriate. So before I begin, I'd just like to provide you with a note on the terminology that I'm going to cover. The term violence against women and girls refers to acts of violence or abuse that we know disproportionately affect women and girls. As mentioned earlier, crimes and behaviour covered by this term include rape and other sexual offences, domestic abuse, stalking, honour-based abuse including female genital mutilation, forced marriage and honour killings, as well as many others, including offences committed online. And while we use the term violence against women and girls, throughout this strategy, this refers to all victims of any of these offences. Violence is defined as above, which includes rape and other sexual assaults. The next term is stalking and involves a person becoming fixated or obsessed with another. And stalking is a pattern of persistent and unwanted attention that makes you feel pestered, scared, anxious, or harassed. And some examples of stalking are regular giving unwanted gifts, making unwanted communication, and damaging property. The next term is domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is characterised by any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behaviour, violence or abuse between those aged 16 or over who are or have been intimate partners or family members regardless of age or sexuality. Honour-based violence is a collection of practices that are used to control behaviour within families in order to protect perceived cultural and religious beliefs and/or honour. Honour-based abuse includes female genital mutilation, forced marriage, and honour killings. Revenge porn is revealing or sexually explicit images or videos of a person posted on the internet, typically by a former sexual partner, without the consent of the subject and in order to cause them distress or embarrassment. And lastly, upskirting is the action or practice of secretly taking photos or videos at an angle to see up a woman's skirt or dress. And there are sessions on all of the subtopics that we will discuss today. And if there are any of you that would like to know more about these, then please do get in touch with us. So as well as the violence itself and the crimes being carried out, the effects on these people can be lifelong. There are also the following points to consider: the detrimental effects on mental health, physical health, homelessness, and the negative impact that it can have on employment, education, and family. And these could well be the first signs in some cases. So some of these interventions will help when interventions are needed, remembering that we are there to support, but not to take on the full load. So what can we do? We can listen to and believe survivors. This needs to be not only us as educators, but as a society. Listening to each other and be empathetic to everyone's journey. The Be Kind movement has helped somewhat to support this area, as you really do never know who you are standing next to and what they are dealing with. So the next one are around services being fit for purpose. Services in your local community will vary, so ensure that you have a list and know what is available. And this is also a government issue, and support for driving services forward is always needed. So this means that shelters, hotlines, counselling and all support for survivors of gender-based violence need to be available for those in need, even during the coronavirus pandemic. The next one is understanding consent, and we have discussed this in other bite-sized sessions, and you will find these on our YouTube channel in the VCERT playlist. And there are also some great websites to support the understanding of consent. Starting conversations. Talk to the young people and get to know them with professional curiosity. It is often these conversations that young people open up as they feel they are being listened to. And the next 2 points go hand in hand. Call out inequalities and speak up and teach each other. When transforming attitudes, it's okay to get it wrong sometimes. It is how we learn from mistakes that we grow and improve. And these last ones, stand against inequality and hold each other accountable. So I'm now going to pass back to Stacey, who's going to talk you through how we can all work together to help prevent violence against women and girls.
Thanks, Kelly. I think there's some really, really important points on that slide there about interventions, particularly starting those conversations and standing against inequality and holding each other accountable. I think that can really be part of policies and procedures. It can be part of how we embed that within our education, within our schemes of work, within everything that we do. So I think those are really key, and when you look back on this recording and share this recording, I think those are really, really good points to take back to support the whole team. So we need to consider the messages that we are sending to children and young people in their everyday interactions and the environment around them. Being the early years and childcare subject specialist here at NCFE, I'm always thinking about starting right from birth, because we have that opportunity to interact and be respectful, consider the feelings, needs and consent of each individual. I remember really clearly Jane Evans, a trauma parenting specialist, appearing on Good Morning Britain discussing consent of a baby when hugging and even when changing nappies. She received so much abuse online for the comments that she made, and they had calling her stupid for even considering asking a child if it's okay to change their nappy. What Jane was trying to convey was the way in which you interact with that baby respectfully. We're going to change your nappy now, instead of just picking them up and making them have it changed. The way in which we use language with young children will set a blueprint for how they expect to be spoken to and what they consider a healthy relationship. And I think very much we can think about how we talk to girls and boys in settings as well. There's lots of different research that I could refer to here, but one in particular being the Liverpool project, and what happened in that was there was lots of people in a room, and they passed around a baby who's dressed in blue, and their interactions with that baby were quite like bouncing them on their knee, and quite forceful, and being quite jumping them up and down. I'm showing you, I know you can't see me, but jumping them up and down on their knee and things like that. And when a girl was sent around, it was like very gentle and passing them from one to the other. And I think things like that, things like those projects, we can really explore our own gender bias and how that comes across in delivery sometimes, and how it comes across in taking care of the children. Lots and lots to unpick there, but the messages that we're sending to the children in the early years can have a massive impact. In 2019, the World Health Organization published Respect, which was 7 strategies to preventing violence against women. And under these headings were what we could implement in education. So R was for relationships, relationship skills strengthened. So we do this through our relationship, sex and health education, which is now a statutory requirement in schools. And it's important that this is maintained, and an element of kindness is also embedded within the school day. And for the early years, as I said, it's also very relevant and delivered through quality interactions and respect and consent. Can't stress that enough. E is empowerment of women. This is the equality of genders considered and the equal opportunities strengthened, being role models to the women and girls in our lives. I don't mind saying that I am a mother to 2 girls, and I very much like to be that role model to them, and I think they see that hopefully in the home. So reflecting on a personal level and working on your own self-confidence, your own self-belief, but also as an educator, encouraging voices and allowing those voices to be heard. S is about services, and I think we've talked about this quite a lot, but in short, where services are in place in communities, we need to make sure that we're aware of them and have signposting available. Also, safe spaces to communicate and disclose sensitive information, having a good understanding of procedure for disclosures and support in your own workplace. P is for poverty reduced, and this is again part of the Sustainable Development Goals. Successful prevention requires political commitment and leadership, implementing laws and policies that promote gender equality, investing in women's organisations, and allocating resources to prevention. It also requires addressing the multiple forms of discrimination faced by women. E is about environments. Environments made safe. Safeguarding measures in place, including for yourselves. Everyone should have the right to feel safe in their environment, and how we do that is paramount. I'd just like to put this out here because I think environments is something that we can talk about quite a lot, and sometimes can be the change that can have a really big impact. So can anyone share with us how they've made safe environments for their students to be able to communicate? Or anything that's made a difference? One teacher shared with me the other day that they have what they call a stress bucket. So they have that in the room for students to be able to write things down and put them in the stress bucket, and they all sort of support each other. Is that what a Dropbox is as well? Yeah, always provided a Dropbox. So brilliant, thank you. So yeah, a Dropbox to be able to just write that down. Referrals to mental health services are scant, and for those that are able to access therapy, it's often prohibitive due to cost or an insufficient sessions offered. I think government strategy should have included a section on follow-up on violence and abuse damage, and recognise the importance of ongoing long-term mental health. No good just offering 6 to 12-hour sessions. Yeah, mental ill health takes so much longer to improve. I completely agree, and yeah, there is so much more to be done. One-to-one tutorials on wellbeing, absolutely, and I think that for staff as well. I think if you're holding on to a lot of stress from other people, if you're anything like me, you take on everybody else's stress, and you have that sort of. I think we all often, a lot of us have that in education where people tell us things and we take all that on board. So taking care of our own well-being within that as well. Anybody else created any safe spaces for communication?
Stacey, when I did the Operation Encompass work with the schools, I used to do drop-in sessions either side of the sessions, and that was great because it meant it was always in a room that was private and safe, and it meant that teachers, parents or kids could access that before the school day started or after it, and sometimes on a lunchtime as well, which was really good.
That's excellent, thank you, Kerry. And I think that's something that maybe can be implemented with, you know, not a lot of cost involved in that. And I know you'll talk all about those things when you do your lovely speech later as well. Thank you for that, Kerry. And then C is child and adolescent abuse prevention, the whole school approach and how that is implemented. So within your policies, having that solid policy and procedure, knowledge and understanding is really paramount. And then T is all about transformed attitudes, beliefs, and interventions focus on women's safety, addressing unequal gender power relations, using lots of different approaches to support that, and also facilitate partnerships across organisations and sectors. Eliminating violence against women and girls is key to achieving gender equality and women's empowerment. And again, this is Sustainable Development Goal 5, and all of the other SDGs as well will coincide with that. We have been talking about signposting throughout, and this is really a reminder to ensure that yours are current and relevant. As we've heard within the chat, you know, sometimes this can be really few and far between. And of course, these services are in a position where they're inundated a lot of the time and have very, very long waiting lists. But we have got some signposts here for you, details for parents and adults involved. And if you're an adult experiencing domestic abuse in particular, there are organisations that can help. Some of these phone numbers on here, some of the email addresses are really important to have around. And some of them have lots of resources that go with that will support you in your role, which I think is also very important. Thank you. Over to you, Kerry. We're really happy to have Kerry with us today, and she'll talk about all of the wonderful things that she's doing, but also make sure that you've got some further advice and guidance about what to do next, which I think is really important. So over to you, Kerry.
Thanks, Stacey. So I started off working for the police rather than the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, who I work for now, and I was part of a team delivering lessons right from ages sort of 5 and 6, so year 1 right up to year 11, all about relationships, friendships and domestic abuse, obviously at an age appropriate level. And those lessons worked, you know, amazingly well. There wasn't a day that went by where you wouldn't get sort of disclosures, usually a lot more than 1 a day, sometimes delivering 5 lessons a day to different schools. And the disclosures obviously sometimes were pretty hard hitting, so you would be then making referrals and possibly helping the parents as well, or parent of that child who'd made the disclosure. The drop-ins that we ran, like I say, would be before we started the session, in the beginning of the day and then at the end, and sometimes on a lunchtime if it was in a secondary school, to give, you know, staff, students and parents enough opportunities to be able to drop in at any time. The reason we did it that way was because some parents will only get the opportunity to speak to somebody when they're taking their child to school or picking them up, because they might not be allowed to leave the house at any other time. And that was apparent in a few of the disclosures we had from parents. So we recognised straight away how important that was, you know, that they had that opportunity to speak to someone specifically. Although it was difficult because we were letting parents know that these drop-ins were occurring, so potentially the abusive partner would then be able to know that information as well. But you know, there's no other way of getting that information out there to just victims. It had to be out to everybody. But we did have quite a lot. I think across the team of 12 of us, we had, well, it was well over 1,000 disclosures between us. So it was a lot for the year that we did that. And we realised that students sometimes just have no opportunity to speak about things like domestic abuse, because, you know, in a normal school day, it's pretty full on. There's a lot of academic work going on, and even in PSHE, they're covering specific subjects which might not be what they are experiencing or what they need to talk about. Whereas when you get an external speaker in and they're coming in to talk about something very specialised, we found that that was often the trigger for kids to go, right, actually I do need to talk to somebody, I do need to let this out. And sometimes you could say it was a big relief that they did get that opportunity, and sometimes if they were speaking in front of other pupils or students, it was then like a snowball effect, because then other kids would get the guts to kind of come forward and then speak about that. So it was often really useful in knowing that they're not alone as well, because there was much more than one and maybe in their class who were also going through that. Some kids were very much under the radar and not suspected at all by the teachers. So that was always quite interesting, because sometimes you could tell it was a total shock that the teacher was hearing this. Others had been suspected for a long time, but they could never, get this information, and this was the one time that they spoke about that. And then obviously once you know these things, you can get them the right help. And we had good links with charities like Bernardo's, who were offering things like counselling, which was invaluable. And it just showed how having lessons such as that in schools, and now also that we're doing these things in college as well, is so important, because it just gives students that opportunity to speak up or come to you at the end of the lesson. Or if you are able to do drop-in sessions where they're very private, then they've got that chance to speak out. And it might not be the first time you do the lesson. I know sometimes I was seeing the same class 3 times across maybe a number of weeks or months. Sometimes it was the third visit, when they'd got to know me a little bit more, that they were then getting the confidence to speak to me about that. But it was invaluable. And the work that I'm doing now is a little bit more in depth. Sometimes we're doing project-based learning, particularly in pupil referral units and SEMH schools, which is brilliant, because some of these kids have got very complex issues in lives. Yeah, and we're doing other subject matters as well now, which is things like county lines and exploitation and knife crime and malicious communication. So it's kind of spreading our subject matters even further now. So it's really good work, but we just need more of it, more of that opportunity, I think, to give these kids and students the opportunities to speak out, and to know that this is okay to talk about, but not okay to be suffering with things like violence against women and girls. Because if we don't talk about it in schools, then certainly at home they're probably not going to be able to talk about that either, because they might think it's taboo, or especially if it's happening at home, it's just going to be torturous. So I think if we can get it out there, get that awareness, then it's all the more valuable. And actually, I think, Kelly, have you put the links to the lessons in the chat? I think perhaps that might be the case, because the lessons we delivered are all available on the Domestic Abuse Whole System Approach website, which is DOSA for short, and they're all available for free. You can just deliver those lessons. The key stage 4 lessons would be suitable for college age students, because they're pretty hard hitting, and they can be a little bit too hard hitting if some people are quite triggered by what they've been through, but very, very useful if you can get access to those.
I've just put that link into the chat box for everyone, Kerry.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Kelly. Yeah, the lessons are on there, the lesson plans, all the resources, everything is on there, right from, like, say, Key Stage 1 right up to Key Stage 4, if anybody wanted them.
Thank you so much, Kerry. I think that's just fantastic, and I think those resources in themselves will make a massive difference. So thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing. I think it's fantastic. And so now I'd just like you to have a think about your own reflections of today, really, on the content that we've covered today. And we're going to use the question box again here for you to share any of your thoughts and responses about what your key takeaways are, maybe, or what you will do next, and what an impact that you feel this might have, and how it may impact your learners. So I'm just going to give everybody a bit of time to have a think about those, to reflect on those things. And I know that often when you are reflecting, some of these things come up after the session. So fully appreciate that. I think by attending any of these bite-sized sessions, it gives an awareness for you to then move that forward and have it impact your practice. I mean, anybody can attend a webinar or a training session and not do anything with it. And I think the main point is to have a look at what impact that can now have on your practice. So I've attended this, I've got this knowledge, now how can I have the greatest impact? How can this make the greatest impact? So lots of people saying they're going to share the session with their team and consider how we can make our spaces safer for learners, which is, you know, what a great thing to do. It's brilliant. It's provided me with resource that I can promote within my company as a safeguarding lead, especially the stats. Fantastic. We'll discuss this topic further with my team and consider how we can support our learners at a personal level and also how they in turn can support their learners. Absolutely. I think that peer-on-peer support is also very powerful. I will take away ideas of how we can implement a Dropbox system for our learners. Lovely. And lots more here about updating knowledge and understanding and thinking about the additional resources and increasing everybody's understanding. Great resources in the Dorsa website as well. Thank you very much for that, Kerry. I think that will be really impactful. So it really was our intention today through today's webinar to raise your awareness of tackling violence against women and girls, to introduce the government strategy that's in place and to explore how we could really implement that into educational settings, and also to explore approaches for prevention, interventions and available support. It would be useful to spend a few minutes afterwards just thinking about reflecting on those and understanding how we've achieved them and just allowing this to sort of all settle. I'm now going to pass you back to Kelly to close the session with some really important reminders.
Thanks, Stacey and Kerry. That's been really informative and I think a really powerful session with lots of information covered. So now we have actually reached the end of the webinar, and just before I do close for the session, on a final note, it's more of a plea that we need you. So to ensure you have what you need and feel supported in your educational environments and beyond, then we would really appreciate your suggestions on what CPD or training that you might find useful and beneficial in the future. A few recent suggestions have been county lines, which I know we are already in the planning and developing of with the help of Kerry. So please do watch this space for that one. And another suggestion recently has been the prevention of sexual child abuse. Again, do watch this space for future dates on whether that will be going ahead. And if you think that would be useful, then please do let us know. So if you think that would be useful and do have any other ideas or suggestions for any further CPD sessions in the future, then please do let either myself or Stacey know by emailing us directly on our emails, which is kellyjohnson@ncfe.org.uk or Stacey on staceyman@ncfe.org.uk. Or please do put your ideas into the question box before the webinar is wrapped up, or you can add them to the short evaluation that will pop up at the end of the webinar. So now we have actually reached the end of the webinar, we'd just like to do another quick poll on how confident you're feeling now with your knowledge of tackling violence against women and girls. And as with the first poll, it will be the same numbering system, with 1 being little to no confidence and 10 being very confident. So that poll should appear on your screen. So please just to take a moment to reflect on how confident you're now feeling. Okay, it appears that we've got all the results that we're going to get, so we'll close that and I will share the results. And as you can see, and if you do remember from the first poll, we did have a variation from 1 to 2 and maybe the odd few up there, 7 to 8, potentially even 9 to 10. But as you can see, everyone who has participated in that poll, you can now see, has actually travelled a really positive journey with us today and have moved up. So people are between 5 to 6, 7 to 8, and 9 to 10, which I am sure, as well as Stacey and Kerry, are very pleased that you are now feeling more knowledgeable and self-assured about your knowledge of tackling violence against women and girls, and that you have something that you can take away with you, that you can do something with to really continue to have an impact. So thank you for that. Thanks for everyone for their responses. So we have now reached the end of the webinar with about 2 minutes to go. However, we will remain on the webinar if there are any further questions. So we will now refer back to the question box and check to see if there are any further questions coming in. And whilst we do that, I would like to take this opportunity again to thank Kerry for attending and supporting the development of this webinar. Thank you, you've been a total star. If you don't actually have any questions at the moment, but you do think of any after the webinar, then again, please do feel free to contact either myself or Stacey directly using our email addresses. And again, it is kellyjohnson@ncfe.org.uk and staceymann@ncfe.org.uk. Now, if you don't, I just wanted to remind people that if any of the content has been upsetting or if you've been affected by any of the content in today's session, please do refer back to the signposting details for further information, help and support. And at this point, whilst we are checking the question box, if you don't have any further questions, please do feel free now to leave the webinar. And when you do leave, we'd really appreciate it if you could complete the short evaluation that does pop up at the end, just to help us make any future improvements and or changes to the service and support that we provide to you and your centres. For those that are about to leave, I just want to say thanks for attending, listening, and on behalf of everyone here at NCFE, we do wish you a safe and successful year.
Thanks everyone, bye.